Hello and welcome to Illuminations with Tina and Fee. I'm Tina and today we have our guest episode for our series on frustration. And with me I've got Rachel Cooke, who's a wonderful, wonderful lady, and I will let her introduce herself to you. Over to you, Rachel. Hi.
Hi everyone. So I'm Rachel. I'm a coach and therapist, and I'm very excited to be talking to you today about frustration. So I've been a therapist for 7 years now, and kind of gone into more of a coaching, I suppose, more of a coaching element to the work that I do in the last 2 to 3 years. And I tend to attract a lot of freelancers, entrepreneurs, quite high-powered business people. And I found that frustration is a topic that regularly comes up. So yeah, I've experienced it myself a lot in both personal and professional life. And so, yeah, it's one that definitely deserves some time talking about and strategizing and finding out what works for each person, which might change over time, so that's something to talk about today.
Brilliant. Thank you for that introduction. Very exciting that of course, you've experienced frustration. We all have, I guess. And also that your clients very often bring that kind of aspect up. So should we start there, maybe exploring a little bit about what frustration means to you, and then maybe look at some strategies that help your clients?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So frustration, I sort of define it as the feeling of being distressed, upset, or annoyed as a result of not being able to change or achieve something, or more importantly, feeling like you're not able to change or achieve something, because often it's not quite the case that you can't. And so, I think that's quite a common way to look at it. There's a feeling of irritation, there's an element of anger, but there's also often connected feelings of helplessness, feeling that that now you've gone into a feeling of procrastination, that you now don't know where to go next, and so it's just easier to go with head in the sand. You've had a feeling of a bit annoyed, and now just don't want to deal with that anymore. So I think a lot of frustration comes down to the pressure that we put on ourselves to generally to achieve, that we've set out to do something, and then we have our ideas, we've maybe thought or discussed or written about how we might go about that, and then when it doesn't quite go to plan, we maybe just at certain times aren't as adaptable as might be more constructive for us, and so this feeling sets in of or meh, or no, this isn't working. So yeah, I think a lot of what I'm talking about here is expectations. There's a lot in terms of what we've put in our mind. There's pressure there's achievement, there's expectations of how something needs to turn out. And something that I found that is quite interesting is that a lot of the feelings of frustration that people experience are around situations that are actually beyond their control. Okay. So being able to sort of look at the situation and say, okay, what here can I actually influence or manage or change, and what can't I? Because it's going to be a complete waste of time worrying or trying to change something that is not within your power.
I think when Fee and I have talked about it, we've talked a lot about control. Mm-hmm. Not having control over a situation, or not feeling or perceiving that you have control of a situation, and then maybe appointing that blame on someone else, and then when it kind of dawns on you that kind of maybe is about you, mm-hmm. then that frustration is even bigger, because and then it's the kind of the lashing out, to kind of relieving that frustration, or kind of pushing it down into your body, and then having symptoms.
Absolutely. And so that brings me on to, the first thing that I find that I talk about with clients, and that I found has been probably the one most important thing that I've made, become more aware of and made changes around, is the idea of your self-talk or your inner critic. So just being able to notice and step back a little bit, hear yourself, or notice yourself saying to yourself, you are stupid, or you're not going to be able to do this. Or even if it's not that personal, it could be just be saying, this isn't going to work. I should just quit now, or whatever it is that you say to yourself. most of us are not really aware of the inner monologue going on. And so just being able to go, oh, okay, what am I actually saying to myself here? You know, a lot of it isn't very realistic. It's certainly not very compassionate. And so being able to be a bit of a better friend to yourself. You know, I say this all the time to clients. Would you say to a friend what you have just said to yourself?
Yeah.
And often people are very shocked or even quite upset that they've been that unkind to themselves, because they would never say that to someone else. You know, if someone came to them with a problem and said, oh, you know, I'm struggling with this, they would never say, you idiot, why haven't you been able to manage this? There you go again. Look at you always do this. So, you know, that one, be a better friend to yourself. That can be really, really helpful.
Yeah. But it's I think that this is the power of talking to somebody who listens and who is prepared to kind of point things out to yourself. Like you said, very often people are not even aware that they're having this self-talk. So it's kind of going on in there. But of course, our subconscious mind is kind of going, okay, so I'm stupid, I'm an idiot, you know, and kind of push yourself down and push yourself down and push yourself down.
Yeah. And it happens in so many ways as well. You know, you take 5 or 10 people, their self-talk is very different. So some people will hear they'll hear their own voice as if they're talking out loud. For other people, it could be someone else's voice, either someone who they don't know, or it could be more like a parent figure or a teacher they remember, or that they don't even have a perception of it being a voice per se. It's more that the words can flash up visually for them, or that it's simply a feeling and not particularly, you know, there is no real element of a voice to it. But again, just being able to be sort of, as much as you can, having this attitude of acceptance and curiosity about your experience. So instead of beating yourself up for beating yourself up, being able to say, okay, I've got this inner critic, we all do. Just take a look at the qualities of what are going on here. And maybe jotting that down, taking notes about what you generally say to yourself, see if you can draw some patterns. Are there certain areas where you're harder on yourself than others? That sort of thing, I think, can be super useful.
Yeah, very enlightening, you know, to kind of go through that kind of process and taking time to do that. So what else do you do with your clients?
So another one is writing. So I get all of my clients to keep a journal. Lots of people have already kept journals or diaries in the past, and I will often say to people, especially when we started in a more therapeutic than coaching context, the point of a journal is not to sort of write every day, you know, I felt really bad today, things went wrong, but it's also not to be positive or optimistic for the sake of it. It's more about recording your experience so that you will be able to draw insight patterns from that over time, but also just the act of writing. You know, we now know, for instance, that trauma is stored in a non-linguistic part of our brains. So that is why a lot of talking therapy isn't particularly useful for people who've gone through trauma. So being able to actually write, spend that time, you know, preferably physically writing, you know, with a pen and paper. Although some people just much prefer to type, and that's fine too. But I do find that most people get the best result out of, or feel that they get the most from writing physically with pen and paper. And so it could be about anything. You know, if we're working together, I could say, right, okay, I'm going to give you a topic to reflect on each week, or you might want to think about what we talked about in the last session, you reflect on that. If there's anything that came up during the week or 2 weeks between when we see each other again, and if they take some notes. It could be having a type of a mood diary where 1 to 3 or even more, if you can, times a day, you'll just say, how do I feel out of 10? And maybe a couple of words, and also see if you can connect, like right now I feel disappointed. Okay, what has just happened that you feel disappointed about? It doesn't have to be you writing for ages about why you were a disappointment or why this thing is never going to work out. More just seeing, you know, what is my internal experience? What is that connected to that is external? See what you can make of it over time. Another thing in terms of writing is having an accomplishments log. So that can be great for people who struggle with procrastination, and especially people who have a more unstructured lifestyle. So either because they work for themselves, or just have flexible work or whatever it is. Often people who freelance or entrepreneurs, they feel like they're never working enough, but at the same time they're working too much. And so there's a bit of that push-pull there. And having something like an accomplishments log where you can write down either at the start, middle, or end of each day, no matter how small it was, what did you achieve today, means that over time you can start to see, okay, which areas are you maybe procrastinating on more and need to take a better look at, which areas are you kind of wasting time on and not getting much out of, and then which areas are you actually doing really well and can appreciate and sort of congratulate yourself for getting through lots in those areas.
Yeah, I can really connect with that myself, working for myself. I tend to forget, the things that I do accomplish. And that can be a frustration. Oh, I'm not getting anywhere, or this is not happening. And just to kind of be able to go back and go, oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I forgot about that one. I've done that, definitely very helpful. Yeah. Do you have one last strategy that you want to share?
I do. So I would say, okay, for a last one, I think most importantly, when you're trying to move past the feeling of frustration, is to focus on what you can do right now and take action. To just, no matter how small it is, just being able to say, steer away where you can from asking, why did this happen? Or, here I go again, or anything like that in terms of self-talk, but asking, what do I want? What can I actually achieve now? Right now, or in the next 24 hours, that will take me a step towards what the goal is. And so, yeah, that sounds incredibly oversimplified, but just being able to take action often gets us on, a bit more, we're sort of moving then. Yeah. So rather than being on lockdown and you're now stuck going, oh God, I have all these different options, I don't know where to go from here, I'm just going to leave it for a while. Sometimes, yes, taking a step back is necessary, take a break. But that if you can, when you're in an experiencing intense frustration, just being able to decide on something that you can do, I think can be particularly constructive in just letting that feeling of frustration melt away and getting back to getting productive, motivated, excited.
Yeah. Exactly. That's also kind of taking control of the situation, and it doesn't have to be control of the whole situation, but, if you take part of it, it's kind of like,
exactly.
Okay, it's not totally out of my control at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. And what do you think in general, I mean, this is a very big picture now and kind of putting everybody into one bucket. What is it that clients usually want instead of that frustration? What is the feeling that they're looking for?
So a lot of people go with sort of calm, relaxed, and then there's the other, I would say generally half of people want to go with motivated, energetic, excited. And for some people, those are all the same thing. They're just under the branch of happy. But I think there's a mixture there of a sense of energy, but a sense of calm, which can be achieved in the same moment. But that those are generally the feelings that people are looking for, to not feeling stuck, a feeling of forward motion, a feeling of, rather than running on forward motion out of anxiety, that there can still be an element of stress, because, some stress is healthy for us and gives us an impetus to move forward, but that it's at a level that feels manageable and kind of incentivizing and exciting.
Yeah. Brilliant. Rachel, thank you very much for coming in and sharing your insights and your experience and all those tools that people can go ahead and use. And I guess not just in cases where they got frustration, but other situations as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anytime when you feel it, because again, frustration is different to different people. So sometimes the sense that you have is just of feeling unmotivated, which for some people is the epitome of frustration, for others is not. But these sort of things are, techniques that you can use, no matter what the negative feeling is, or stuck feeling, or anything that you're experiencing that isn't constructive to helping you move forward the way you want to.
Exactly. And where can people find you if they want to know more about you?
Yeah, so people can find me at, I have a group therapy website, which is p-therapy.com. And I also have my own website, which is racheljanecooke.com.
Excellent. And we'll put those at the end credits as well, so that people can find you. Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming, being with us on Illuminations.
Lovely to be here.
Bye.
Bye.